The sun was starting to go down over the south side of Chicago. I remember looking at my house and feeling a deep sense of pride. It was a solid building, a place I had put my heart and soul into. I had worked so hard to keep it in good shape. My plan was simple. I wanted to sell it, move on, and start a new chapter of my life. The for sale sign stood in the front yard, looking bright and full of hope. I thought the hard part was over. I thought all I had to do was wait for the right buyer to walk through the front door. That hope turned into a cold, heavy stone in my stomach with just one phone call. My realtor sounded confused and a little bit scared. She told me she had gone to the house to show it to a family who was interested in buying it. But when she turned the key and walked in, the house wasn't empty. There were people inside. There were clothes on the floor. There was the smell of food in the air. Someone was living in my house. I drove there as fast as I could. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I kept telling myself it was a mistake. Maybe someone had the wrong address. Maybe a door had been left unlocked and a neighbor had wandered in. But deep down, I knew it was something worse. When I pulled up to the curb, I saw a woman and a man through the window. They looked comfortable. They looked like they belonged there. It felt like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart. I walked up to my own front door and knocked. I didn't even know why I was knocking on a door that I owned. A woman named Charmaine opened it. She didn't look guilty. She didn't look like a thief. She looked at me like I was the one who was lost. Her boyfriend, Codarro, stood behind her. They told me they had bought the house. They said it was theirs now. I felt my face get hot. My voice was trembling as I told them I was the owner. I showed them my ID. I told them they had to leave right now. But they didn't move. They didn't even blink. They pulled out a piece of paper that looked like a mortgage document. They told me they had paid for the property. I looked at the paper and I could tell it was wrong. It didn't look official. It looked like something someone had typed up in an hour, but they were so calm about it. Their calmness made me feel like I was losing my mind. I called the police, thinking this would be over in 10 minutes. I thought the officers would see the truth and kick them out into the street. The police arrived with their lights flashing. I felt a small wave of relief. I thought justice was finally here. I showed the officers my papers. I told them I was trying to sell the house and these people just moved in. The officers went inside and talked to Charmaine and her boyfriend. I waited on the sidewalk, breathing the cold Chicago air, waiting for them to be let out in handcuffs. When the officers came back out, they didn't have the squatters with them. One of the officers looked at me with a look of pity that I will never forget. He told me that because they had a document and they were already inside, he couldn't do anything. He told me it was a civil matter. He said I had to go to court. He said that under the law, since they claimed they lived there, they had rights. I stood there in the dark, watching the police drive away. My house was right in front of me, but I wasn't allowed to go inside. I was the one standing in the cold while strangers used my lights, my water, and my space. The unfairness of it felt like a physical weight. I thought about the court system. I knew it could take months, maybe even a year, to get a court date. By then, the house would be ruined. The buyers would be gone. My life would be on hold while these people lived for free on my hard work. I went home that night, but I didn't sleep. I laid in bed staring at the ceiling. I felt like a failure. I felt like the world had turned upside down. The law was protecting the people who broke into my house instead of protecting me. I felt a mix of hot anger and cold fear. I knew I couldn't wait for a judge. I had to do something. I had to make them leave. The next morning, I made a choice that felt crazy. If the law said they had a right to be there, then I had a right to be there too. I am the owner. If they wouldn't move out, then I would move in. I called my wife and a few of my strongest friends. I told them the plan. We weren't going to be violent. We weren't going to break any rules. We were just going to make it impossible for them to enjoy staying there. We went to the store and bought air mattresses. We packed some bags with basic things. We walked up to the house and used my key to open the door. Charmaine and Codarro were in the kitchen. They looked shocked to see us. I didn't yell. I just looked at them and said that since they were staying, we were staying too. We went into the living room and started blowing up the air mattresses. The loud, humming sound of the air pumps filled the house. It was a sound of war, but a quiet kind of war. That first night was one of the strangest experiences of my life. My wife and I laid on a thin plastic mattress on the floor of our own living room. Every time a floorboard creaked, my heart jumped. We stayed awake, watching the bedroom door where the squatters were sleeping. I felt like I was in a cage with a dangerous animal. I kept thinking, what if they have a weapon? What if they try to hurt us while we sleep? But I couldn't leave. If I left, I lost. The house felt heavy with silence. Nobody talked. We could hear them whispering behind the bedroom door. We used the same bathroom. We walked past each other in the hallway without saying a word. The tension was so thick it felt like you could cut it with a knife. I felt a constant pressure in my head. My stomach was in knots. Every minute felt like an hour. I was tired, I was hungry, and I was deeply, deeply sad. This was supposed to be my victory, my big sale. Instead, I was sleeping on the floor like a prisoner. By the second day, I could see that the squatters were getting tired. They didn't like having us there. They couldn't play music. They couldn't have friends over. They couldn't relax. They realized that I was more stubborn than they were. I was willing to sit in that living room forever if it meant getting my house back. Finally, they opened the bedroom door and asked to talk. They didn't apologize. They didn't say they were sorry for what they had done. Instead, they asked for money. They wanted $8,000 to leave. It felt like a kidnap ransom. They were holding my building hostage and they wanted me to pay for its release. I felt a rush of anger. I wanted to tell them to get out and never come back. I wanted to fight for every penny. But then I thought about the months of court fees. I thought about the stress that was killing me and my wife. I thought about the buyers who were waiting. I had to be smart, even if it hurt my pride. We sat at the kitchen table and negotiated. We went back and forth for hours. In the end, we agreed on $4,300. I had to go to the bank and take out the cash. Handing that envelope over felt like a punch to the gut. I was paying criminals to leave my own property. I watched them count the bills. Then, I made them sign a paper saying they would leave and never come back. I watched them pack their bags. I watched them walk out the front door and get into their car. As soon as the door closed behind them, I locked it. I leaned my back against the wood and let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for days. I looked around the house. It was messy. It felt dirty. The energy of the rooms felt wrong. I started cleaning immediately. I scrubbed the floors and the walls like I was trying to wash away a bad memory. I thought it was over. I thought I could finally move on. But a few weeks later, my phone rang again. It was a detective from the Chicago Police Department. He told me that after Charmaine left my house, she didn't stop. She went to another house and did the exact same thing to another family. She was a professional. She knew exactly how to use the law to steal people's homes. She had been arrested this time because she had tried to do it to people who knew how to push the police harder. Hearing that didn't make me feel better. It made me feel worse. It made me realize that there are people out there who look for kindness and see it as a weakness. They look at a house and don't see a home. They see a target. I realized that my story wasn't just about a house. It was about how thin the line is between being safe and being a victim. I eventually sold the house. The new family moved in and I hope they are happy there. I hope they never have to hear a knock on the door that changes everything. But sometimes when I'm driving through the city and I see a for sale sign, I feel a shiver go down my spine. I think about that living room floor. I think about the sound of the air mattress. I learned that the things we own aren't really ours if the law won't protect them. I learned that sometimes you have to do the unthinkable just to keep what you earned. But the most unsettling part is knowing that she is still out there somewhere. She is looking for the next empty house. She is looking for the next person who thinks they are safe. I keep my doors locked now. I check my windows every night. Because I know that a house can be taken in a second, but the feeling of being hunted stays with you forever.